talk about the Aba Women's War. In 1929, tens of thousands of Nigerian women brought the entire British government in southeastern Nigeria to its knees. No guns, no weapon, no men leading them, no formal organization, just women, marketing farmer, mother, and they won. The British called it a riot, and the women called it a war. And the difference in those two words tells you everything. To understand why this happened, you need to understand what life looked like in southeastern Nigeria in 1929. Since 1914, the British had been ruling through a system of warrant chiefs. Local men they handpicked and appointed to govern the Igbo community on their behalf. The problem was that the Igbo didn't have a unified political institution like in the north. Power was decentralized and communal. So forcing a chief onto communities that had never had one created resentment and corruption from day one. Then the global economy collapsed. The worldwide economy and repression that drove down the price of palm oil. The region's main exports. So it causes a lot of things. It causes unemployment to rise. It increases the price of goods. People were already struggling. And then the British started talking about taxing women. It happened on the morning of November 18, 1928, in a town called Oluko. A warrant chief named Okugo sent his representative Mark Emeru. I'm sorry for the pronunciation, I'm not from the East. Sent his representative Mark Emeruwa to conduct a census, the first step towards taxing women. The Mark entered the compound of a widow named Emeoruwa and asked her to count her livestock and the people living with her. Emeruwa knew exactly what this was, so she looked at him and said, "Was your widowed mother counted?" That one question from one woman in one compound ignited something that spread across regions, spread across hundreds of miles in this, because she didn't go home and worry. She went straight to the town square where women were already discussing, talking about the same thing, and then they made a decision. What happened next was not spontaneous chaos, it was organized, strategic, and terrifying to the British administration. Women mobilized across the streets, traders, mothers, they were marching towns, surrounding government native courts, they were encircling the homes of warrant chiefs, they sang protest songs, they danced in circle around government building and demanded that warrant chiefs hand over their caps of authority. Within days, the women grew from about 400 to 4,000 in numbers. They were they wore palm leaves as a symbol of protest. They were attacking government buildings and native courts. At its peak, about 25,000 women participated in this protest across Calabar and Owerri. They marched colonial courts, they burned down the homes of warrant chiefs, forcing these corrupt leaders to flee. The British had no idea what to do because their model of operation, their model of control, which is appointing compliant men, was collapsing in real time, organized by the very people they had assumed was politically invisible. The British response was brutal. But soldiers were shooting protesting women. Entire community and villages were burned down as collective punishment. The Aba Women's War had resulted in to the death of 51 women and one man. On December 1929, at one confrontation, two women were killed and many others wounded at and in an encounter with British police. Their leader in Aba was arrested and detained. The women mourned and kept going. Here's what those women were able to achieve. The tax was never implemented, and the role of warrant chiefs was significantly weakened. The uprising is seen as the first major challenge to British authority in Nigeria and West Africa during the colonial period. They organized without phones, without social media, without formal institution, just women passing word from compound to compound, from market to market, and they forced an entire British empire to back down. The British called it a riot to minimize it, but the women called it a war because they knew what they had done. Imioruwa's name should as well be known as any general or king in Nigerian history. She didn't lead an army. She only asked one question and 25,000 women answered. If you didn't learn this in school, drop a comment, share this video because this is exactly the type of story that deserves to be told. Subscribe for next video and like I said before, drop a comment and tell me which Nigerian woman from history do you think deserve our own video?